September Rochester City Council meeting. Before we begin tonight's meeting, I'll make note of the changes we've implemented, suspending in-person meetings temporarily in compliance with the executive orders. Our meeting is not taking place in council chambers, but rather through the use of video conferencing. During this time, we're continuing to offer the meeting access to the public by posting information and materials on the city's website at cityofrochester.gov/public meetings, and by broadcasting our meetings live on City Council's YouTube channel, sharing on our Facebook page, and streaming live on City 12 TV. I'd also like to thank the Department of Neighborhood and Business Service Development, specifically James Demps at the Genesee Street Neighborhood Service Center office for allowing the city clerk and her staff to use your facility today to prepare for tonight's meeting. We appreciate that. Now the meeting will come to order, and I ask the clerk to call the roll.
Councilmember Evans?
Present.
Councilmember Gruber?
Here.
Councilmember Harris?
Here.
Councilmember Lupian?
Here.
Councilmember Patterson?
Here.
Councilmember Pio?
Here.
Vice President Lightfoot?
Present, ma'am.
President Scott?
Here. I ask that council please join me in a moment of silence and that we remember the life of Daniel Prude. Councilmember Evans, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God, indivisible,
Indivisible.
with
with
liberty
liberty and
and
justice.
justice for all. Thank you.
Next, we have the approval of the minutes by Councilmember Pio.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of August 18th, 2020 be approved as published in the official sheets of the proceedings.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 8-0 into the record.
It's time for the presentation and reference of petitions and any other communications. Are there any petitions?
Council President, I have a
Yes.
petition from the good people on Long Acre Drive requesting speed bumps. It has 20 signatures.
Thank you, Councilmember Patterson. Their petition will be received and filed. Before we move to the reports of standing committees and actions thereon, we have a number of items that have arrived this month with statements of necessity. I, along with Council Members Gruber and Lupian, have proposed introductory number 346, legislation repealing introductory numbers 2020-270 and 2020-271 related to the Rochester Police Department Goodman Section and Southeast Neighborhood Service Center. I would first need a vote of at least 6 members to introduce this item. Councilmember Gruber, may I have a motion to introduce number 330, introductory number 346?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to introduce introductory number 346.
Thank you, Councilmember Gruber. Councilmember Lupian, would you like to second that motion?
Yes, Madam President, I second that motion.
We'll conduct this vote by roll call. Clerk will call the roll, please.
Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Councilmember Gruber?
Yes.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Councilmember Lupian?
Yes.
Councilmember Patterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Pio?
Nay.
Vice President Lightfoot?
Yes.
President Scott?
Yes. Motion carries.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 7-1 into the record with Councilmember Pio voting no.
Are there any questions or comments on introductory number 346?
I would like to make a comment, President Scott.
Certainly.
This was very difficult last 2 months related to this legislation because there was so much changing, specifically in the last 2 months. And I don't want that to take away from the fact that there was a really good and robust process that took place over well more than 5 years. So, and I know that process involved obviously people from the mayor's office, people from RPD, but also, this came out of the Parks and Public Works Committee. I know that Commissioner Jones and his team worked painstakingly on it. And I know that because of the involvement of the neighborhood service centers, Commissioner Kirkmeyer and his team worked on it. And what I don't want to be forgotten amidst the repeal of this legislation is all the work that was done on it. And we heard several people in the speak to council comments talk about their concern this will end up being just a hole somewhere on East Main Street, and that we've already acquired properties, people have already been removed from their homes. I want to make a statement and a commitment that the city needs, we need to put together collectively between council and the administration a plan for this space. I think this is an opportunity to continue to combine the work of the neighborhood service centers with the work of public safety. We're in the process now, we're going to be voting on something later related to the FACET team. We're talking about starting the process of reimagining public safety. It could very well be that this location on East Main Street can house a number of these different services. And I want us to really challenge ourselves to find a solution so that the neighbors don't feel like all that work for 5.5 years was for naught, and that property stays as a whole forever. We have a responsibility, and I'm very confident that all of us will work together to find the right solution for that space. But with that said, I do want to appreciate all the council members for joining and pushing pause, as we have a lot of work to do to build back the trust right now. And this, I think, is a good time to press pause as we do that work.
Council President, I'd like to make a statement as well.
Councilmember Lupien?
Thank you. I'm very grateful to this council for repealing the legislation, and I really look forward to what does go in this case, because, as Councilmember Gruber stated, it cannot be just a whole. And, there's many things that it can be, as we are reimagining policing, violence prevention efforts, it could be for mental health crisis teams. We don't know, but I do look forward to the process of engaging with the community and really determining what the best use of that space will be. Thank you.
Now, let's vote on introductory number 346, legislation to repeal introductory numbers 2020-270 and 2020-271 related to the Rochester Police Department, Goodman Section, and Southeast Neighborhood Service Center. This requires a roll call.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Councilmember Gruber,
Yes.
Councilmember Harris,
Yes.
Councilmember Lupien,
Yes.
Councilmember Patterson,
Yes.
Councilmember Pio,
Nay?
Vice President Lightfoot,
Yes, ma'am.
President Scott.
Yes, motion carries 7-1.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 7-1 into the record with Councilmember Pio voting no.
The mayor has submitted introductory number 347 with a statement of necessity. Introductory number 347 is legislation amending ordinance numbers 2017-165 and 2019-86 related to 270 East Avenue Affordable Housing Project for Inner Loop Site 2. Are there any questions or comments on this legislation?
I have one.
Yes, Councilmember Gruber.
I believe at one point when this project changed initially from workforce housing to affordable housing, there was talk of a daycare or a childcare facility in it as well. What is just curious about the status of that?
Right now, the child care center is on hold because of what's happening with COVID. And so the location will still be utilized as commercial space, but the child care center that was looking to go there basically is on hold because of what's happening around COVID.
So are they intending to build the bottom, the ground level as commercial space, like hoping that there's going to be retail in there, or are they still building it with the hope of maybe getting like a business or a childcare center or something like that?
So they've been in talks with a business to go there, and they're almost final with that.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
There are no additional questions. Let's vote on introductory number 347. This requires a roll call.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Councilmember Gruber,
Yes.
Councilmember Harris,
Yes.
Councilmember
Yes.
Lupien, Councilmember Patterson,
Yes.
Councilmember Pio,
Yes.
Vice President Lightfoot,
Yes.
President Scott.
Yes. The motion carries 8-0.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 8-0 into the record.
The mayor and the council have submitted introductory number 348 with a statement of necessity. Introductory number 348 is legislation amending the 2020-21 budget and transferring family and victim services from the police department to the Department of Recreation and Youth Services. Are there any questions or comments on this legislation?
Madam President, I have
Yes.
a comment.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just wanted, through you, Madam President, to Commissioner or actually to Director Demps. Has there been any conversation with the union or a commitment to have dialogue with the union as a result of this particular legislation?
Yes, we have had conversations with the union, advising them of the process. We are not obligated because there are no contractual changes, but out of good faith and letting them know the changes that are affecting their members, we have had conversations with them, and we will be also having additional conversations with them more tomorrow as the process continues to roll out for the next couple of months.
Thank you, Director. I support this legislation for many reasons. I think during our civil unrest and a lot of the issues that have come before us recently, especially with the talk of us being able to provide services, that mental health services and other services other than traditional law enforcement services that we provided in the past. I think that this is a good direction that we're moving into. I think by moving this office under the Department of Youth and Recreation is the right thing to do. I think this will help us meet some greater needs of our citizens, especially those that have crisis issues and types of calls that we can begin to respond to on a much larger scale, on a much more strategic scale. I think that I want to commend Commissioner Torres for putting together an outstanding proposal. I think you did a yeoman's job with this. I commend Council Member Harris and Lupien for also sitting in on that and making sure that it met the standards that were necessary as we move forward into this new normal and this new way of presenting law enforcement and/or care to our citizens within our community. There are a lot of work that we've done over the past couple of years around homicides, around responses, around a community comprehensive response to our community, a consistent response. And I think that this is going to add to those particular endeavors that we've already been working on. I commend the mayor and the administration for moving on this. And I want the community to understand that this work was not work that was done as a result of what happened recently. This was work that we had been working on, but it made the right sense to do this. And many reports that we've had, including the Baker-Tilly report, also mentioned this move was something that was studied and recommended. So this is us just doing what was right at the right time. Timing was right. Everything came together. And I want to also honor those who have been working in this particular place, victims services, and for Facet over these last decades for the work that they do. And I want to say that I believe that they're going to be under DRIS. They will be more accessible and visible to the community, that they are a well-kept secret, that I hope that that's not the case as we move forward. So again, I want to encourage my colleagues to vote in favor of this particular legislation. And I look forward to the coming months as we unwrap what this is looking like for our city. We hear programs like Cahoots and things of that, but this is our Cahoots, if you will, from the best practices that we have currently now within our city government. So again, kudos to all those involved, and especially to Dr. DT and to Dr. Torres for the amazing work that you have done to bring this to the forefront.
Thank you, Vice President Lightfoot, and I would second those comments as well, and put in my perpetual lament about the need for a name change, just sort of leaving that out there for you all, okay? All right, let's vote on.
I'd like to make a comment too, if that's okay.
Yes, Councilmember Lupien.
Yeah, I just want to really commend Dr. Lightman Torres and DT Ogilvy and Dr. DT Ogilvy, and also Dr. Archie, who really put together this proposal really quickly. And I think it's amazing how quickly your department pivoted, for the initial homicide response team, and kind of adjusted and added a team to do this mental health crisis. And I think that, we acknowledge it's not the end all be all, and it's designed to be flexible enough to fit into whatever framework ends up being developed with the city and the county. And, to acknowledge the funding, we know that Cahoots in Eugene is funded about $2 million, and that's a third of our city size. So we know this is just, a portion of the response that will end up being needed, but it's an excellent first step, and I really looking forward to this being implemented. So thank you so much.
Councilmember Evans, your box is lighting up. Are you trying to get attention? Are you?
No, I was just ready to vote.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Let's vote on introductory number 348. This requires a roll call.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Councilmember Gruber,
Absolutely.
Councilmember Harris,
Yes.
Councilmember Lupien,
Yes.
Councilmember Patterson,
Yes.
Councilmember Pio.
Yes.
Sorry, that was a yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Vice President Lightfoot,
Yes.
President Scott.
Yes. Motion carries 8-0.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 8-0 into the record.
All council members have proposed introductory number 348, legislation for an independent investigation and legal services. I would first need a vote of at least 6 members to introduce this item. Vice President Lightfoot, may I have a motion to introduce introductory number 349, please?
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, I'd like to make a motion to introduce introductory number 349.
Thank you. May I have a second for that motion?
Second.
Second.
We'll conduct this vote by roll call.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Councilmember Gruber,
Yes.
Councilmember Harris,
Yes.
Councilmember Lupien,
Yes.
Councilmember Patterson,
Yes.
Councilmember Pio,
Yes.
Vice President Lightfoot,
Yes.
President Scott.
Yes. Before we move from this, I do want to just interject that I was reading an article that made it sound as though we were entertaining this investigation and that we were to be swayed by what the mayor was offering. That was not at all the case. We had spoken about this well over a week ago, and the mayor was supportive of doing this review and this investigation, just as a matter of record.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 8-0 into the record.
Are there any questions or comments on introductory number 349? There are none. Let's vote on introductory number 349, legislation for an independent investigation and legal services. This requires a roll call.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Councilmember Gruber,
Yes.
Councilmember Harris,
Yes.
Councilmember Lupian,
Yes.
Councilmember Patterson,
Yes.
Councilmember Pio,
Yes.
Vice President Lightfoot,
Yes.
President Scott.
Yes, motion carries 8-0.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 8-0 into the record.
That concludes our statements of necessity. Councilmember Evans, the Finance Committee report, please.
Yes, Madam President, and to the council, the Finance Committee recommends for adoption the following entitled legislation. Introductory number 326, 326 is authorizing the cancellation of or refund of erroneous taxes and charges. Introductory number 327, authorizing an amendatory agreement with CipherWorks, Inc. for online employee training. And introductory number 345, authorizing an agreement for expert witness services for the law department. This is respectfully submitted by Council members Lachey D. Harris, Michael A. Patterson, Vice President Willie J. Lightfoot, President Loretta Scott, and myself, Malik D. Evans.
Thank you, Councilmember Evans. That report will be received, filed, and published, and we'll proceed with the vote. Introductory number 326, legislation authorizing the cancellation or refund of erroneous taxes and charges. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 8-0.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 8-0 into the record.
Introductory number 327, legislation authorizing an amendatory agreement for online employee training. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 8-0.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 8-0 into the record.
Introductory number 345, legislation authorizing an agreement for expert witness services. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 8-0.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 8-0 into the record.
Councilmember Patterson, the Neighborhood and Business Development Committee report, please.
Thank you, Madam President. The Neighborhood and Business Development Committee recommends for adoption the following entitled legislation. Just give me a second, let me get there. Normally I'm reading it from the book and couldn't get in the building, so we're reading it off the screen today. Introductory number 328, authorizing the sale of real estate. Introductory number 329, authorizing a mandatory agreement for the Northeast Quadrant Historic Resources Survey. Introductory number 333, authorizing funds in an agreement for the zoning code and map update. Introductory number 334, authorizing the sale of city-owned parcels and a payment in lieu of taxes agreement for the L2P West Side Housing Project. Introductory number 335, authorizing the sale of city-owned parcels and payment in lieu of taxes and loan agreements with the Pueblo, hang on, just give me 1 second here. Where are we at here? Pueblo Nuevo 2 project, introductory number 336, authorizing the sale of city-owned parcels and a loan and payment in lieu of taxes agreement for the Zion Hill Senior Apartment Project. Introductory number 337, authorizing an agreement for the building block software license. The Neighborhood and Business Development Committee recommends for consideration the following entitled legislation. Introductory number 330, amending the zoning map by changing the zoning classification of properties on Federal Street. Introductory number 331, amending the zoning map by changing the zoning classification of properties on Culver Road. This report is respectfully submitted, and introductory number 332, amending the zoning map by changing the zoning classification of properties on Shear Street and on Craig Street. This report is respectfully submitted by Council members Mary Lupian, Council Vice President Willie J. Lightfoot, Council President Loretta C. Scott, and myself, Michael A. Patterson.
Thank you, Councilmember Patterson. That report will be received, filed, and published, and we'll proceed with the vote. Introductory number 328, legislation authorizing the sale of one property. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 8-0.
Clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 8-0 into the record.
Introductory number 329, legislation authorizing amendatory agreements for the Northeast Quadrant Historic Resources Survey. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 8-0.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 8-0 into the record.
Introductory number 330, legislation amending the zoning map by changing the zoning classification of properties on Federal Street. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 8-0.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 8-0 into the record.
Introductory number 331, legislation amending the zoning map by changing the zoning classifications of properties on Culver Road. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 8-0.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 8-0 into the record.
Introductory number 332, legislation amending the zoning map by changing the zoning classifications of properties on Sherwood Street and Craig Street. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 8-0.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 8-0 into the record.
Introductory number 333, legislation authorizing funding and an agreement for the zoning code and map update. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All
So sorry.
opposed, say nay. Motion carries 8-0.
Sorry, I was trying to
Oh.
make a ask actually for a clarification on 333.
Yes, Councilmember Luther.
There were a number of people from the neighborhoods concerned about the process around community engagement. And I just wondered if Commissioner Kirkmeyer could give a description of the community engagement that's going to happen in relation to the zoning code update.
Yes, sure. So we did submit to council the community participation plan that's been developed for that community engagement. All stakeholder groups like the one you're referencing will be engaged as they were in the comprehensive plan process. So we expect full engagement ongoing throughout the process.
Thank you.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 8-0 into the record.
Introductory number 334, legislation authorizing the sale of city-owned parcels and a payment in lieu of taxes agreement for the L2P West Side Housing Project. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say- I'm sorry, did I miss something? All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 8-0.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 8-0 into the record.
Introductory number 335, legislation authorizing the sale of city-owned parcels and payment in lieu of taxes and loan agreement for the Pueblo Nuevo 2 project. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 8-0.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 8-0 into the record.
Introductory number 336, legislation for the Zion Hill Senior Apartment Project. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 8-0.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 8-0 into the record.
Introductory number 337, legislation authorizing an agreement for a building blocks software license. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 8-0.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 8-0 into the record.
Councilmember Gruber, the Parks and Public Works Committee report, please.
Absolutely. To the council, the Parks and Public Works Committee recommends for adoption of following entitled legislation. Introductory number 338, authorizing an agreement for the West Main Street Transportation and Placemaking Study. And introductory number 339, authorizing an agreement with New York State Department of Transportation to provide snow and ice control. This report was respectfully submitted by myself, Councilmember Mitch Gruber, Councilmember Malik Evans, Councilmember Jose Pio, Council Vice President Willie Lightfoot, and Council President Loretta Scott.
Thank you, Councilmember Gruber. That report will be received, filed, and published, and we'll proceed with the vote. Introductory number 338, legislation authorizing an agreement for the West Main Street Transportation and Placemaking Study. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 8-0.
Clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 8-0 into the record.
Introductory number 339, legislation authorizing an agreement with New York State Department of Transportation to provide snow and ice control. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 8-0.
Clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 8-0 into the record.
Vice President Lightfoot, the Public Safety, Youth, and Recreation Committee report, please.
To the Council, the Public Safety, Youth, and Recreation Committee recommends for adoption the following titled legislation. Introduction number 341, authorizing receipt and use of grants for the New York State Governor's Traffic Safety Committee for 2 safety programs. Introductory number 343, authorizing funding for the rock music program. Introduction number 344, authorizing agreement for implementing the Parent Leadership Training Institute. I also wanted, Madam President, to point of understanding, I want to bring out 340 and 342 out of committee at this time, if I can get if that's appropriate at this time.
Yes.
Okay, so I would like to bring out introduction number 340 appropriate.
Council member, that would not be at this time. What I would recommend doing is reading the report as it is stated, and then once the legislation that was recommended by committee is voted on, you could make a motion to discharge legislation after that at that point.
Thank you.
Right now, you're just giving the committee report.
Thank you, BJ.
Okay.
So the following title legislation is being held in committee. Introductory number 340, appropriating funds for compliance checks for registered sex offenders. Introduction number 342, authorizing mandatory agreements for the COPS Community Policing Development Micro Grant Program. This report was respectfully submitted by Councilmember Mitch Gruber, Councilperson LaShaye D. Harris, Council President Loretta C. Scott, and myself, Council Vice President Willie J. Lightfoot.
Thank you, Vice President Lightfoot. That report will be received, filed, and published, and will proceed with the vote. Introductory number 341, legislation authorizing the receipt and use of grants from the New York State Governor's Traffic Safety Committee. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Motion carries 7-1.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 7-1 into the record with Councilmember Lupian voting no.
Introductory number 343, legislation authorizing funding for the rock music program. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 8-1. 8, sorry, 8.
0. The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 8-0 into the record.
Introductory number 344, legislation authorizing an agreement to implement the Parent Leadership Training Institute. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 8-0.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 8-0 into the record.
At this point, if you would want to
Bring it from.
consider something, someone could make a motion to discharge, and if there's a second, you would vote on discharging it, and then you could vote on the legislation as it stood.
So at this time, Madam President, I make a motion to discharge items 340 and 342 out of committee to be voted on by the whole.
I'd like to check with Council Beath just to make sure if we can do them together, if we should do them separately.
I think
Okay.
best practice would be to do them separately.
Thank you, sir. All right, at this time, I amend my motion to make a motion to remove introductory number 340, appropriating funds for compliance checks of registered sex offenders out of committee to be voted on by the whole.
Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor of?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Motion carries 5. It's 6-2.
Madam Clerk?
Now to vote on.
The clerk will
Madam Clerk, go ahead.
think she's froze.
Oh,
Enter the affirmative.
There we go.
Did you want me to enter that into the record?
yes.
Okay, the clerk will, I'm froze?
Mhm.
Okay, clerk affirmative, discharging 340 into the record with 6-2 with Councilmember Lupian and Councilmember Gruber voting no.
Now to vote on introductory number 340. Is there a motion?
You
I
wouldn't
think we just go to vote, right?
the motion was to discharge from committee, and once it's discharged, you're able to vote on it as is.
Okay.
Well, can I ask, since we didn't have a chance to have any debate on this item earlier, can I just ask a couple of questions?
Certainly.
So for the colleagues who are opposed to discharging this from committee, are you really opposed to the police checking on sex offenders?
I can respond to that.
Please.
Councilmember Lupian.
Yeah, actually, I think I did state this in one of our meetings, but I don't believe that uniformed officers need to be the ones doing these checks. And if we're reimagining policing, I'm voting in the way that I would like to see funding allocated in the future. So it's not, I don't think checks need to be done. It's just who's doing them.
You don't think a uniformed officer needs to do a check on a level 2 or level 3 sex offender?
Correct.
Okay.
And Mike, I'm continuing to vote no on items that are specifically about police overtime. That's going to be
Okay.
something that there's going to have to be some major changes to the way we talk about this stuff as part of the next Locust Club contract that would get me to change my mind on those things.
That's fair.
But I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to say that again.
It's always good to hear it on the record.
So were there any additional comments? If not, all in favor of introductory number 340?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
So motion passes 6-2.
Clerk will
Madam
enter the affirmative. I'm sorry, was somebody saying something?
Go ahead.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 6-2 into the record with Councilmember Gruber and Councilmember Lupian voting no.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I make a motion to remove introduction number 342, authorizing a mandatory agreement for the COPS Community Policing Development Micro Grant Program out of committee to be voted on by the whole.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of?
Hold on, point of order. Does it have to be voted on by someone in the committee to bring it out of just a point of understanding? No, okay, thank you.
No.
Vice President Lightfoot, before we bring it out of committee, can we ask some questions now about it? Is that appropriate?
I think we bring it out and then we ask questions.
Okay.
Bring it
It's
out.
coming up.
Okay.
Patrick?
It should be discharged from the committee first, and then there can be debate on the topic once it's on the floor.
Okay. All in favor of bringing introductory number 342 out of committee?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 8-0.
Clerk will enter the affirmative vote to discharge 342 into the record, 8-0.
Now for a motion to approve introductory number 342.
I think you want to have some
There were
conversation.
questions?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Can I start, Vice President Lightfoot?
Yeah, go ahead, Councilmember Gruber.
So there's a lot of language in here that I just is not all that easy for a layperson. I see Nick Petiti on the call. I see data. I assume Nick has plenty of things to tell us about. So what is the text mining and all of this stuff? What is the scope of work of this for the layperson?
Sure. So basically it boils down to using technology to better understand our use of force. Currently, the use of forces are captured in what's called the Subject Resistance Report, an SRR. Those are fillable PDF forms with a bunch of different checkboxes, and then a huge narrative section. Because of the structure of the PDF, they're stored essentially as image files. So there's no searchability amongst the narrative portion of the use of force. So you'd have to manually read each one of them to start looking for patterns and trends. This grant allows for two different things. First, the structuring of the data through a process called optical character recognition, where it can take our image files and convert them to structured data, which will then allow us to apply a bunch of mathematical calculations called natural language processing, so natural language processing, NLP, onto that now structured data to look for patterns and trends. So whereas previously, before this grant, we would have to look manually at every single subject to resistance report, every single use of force to look and identify patterns. This would allow us to do that in a much more structured and fast way.
So this entire grant is specifically about use of force cases?
Yes.
Is that what it was when it was voted on a couple years back too?
Yes.
Huh. So any idea why the term use of force doesn't exist at all in the transmittal? Is that just how it was written?
I'm not sure why not in the transmittal. I mean, the actual reports are called subject resistance reports. They're not called use of force reports, but that is how RPD documents their uses of force.
Gotcha. And does this grant provide a reporting structure that can be shared with, can reports be shared with council as well, please?
Yeah. So actually, as part of this grant, one of the products that'll be part of the outcome will be data available for public transmittal in a usable machine readable format. So once we get the data from these unstructured narratives that we have right now into a structured narrative, obviously protecting against personally identifiable information, following all of our data governance and standards, we can then actually release some of the data in accordance with our open data protocols.
Fantastic. Thanks.
I have a question as well.
Councilmember Lupia.
How far back will this data go?
I would have to double check to be positive, but I believe subject resistance reports that do not have a complaint filed against them and are not sustained get purged after 5 years, I believe. But I'll have to double check. The other issue that we have from a data standpoint is that about 7 years ago, we went from handwritten reports to fillable PDF forms. So anything that's in a handwritten report, we won't actually be able to do any of the OCR recognition on.
Okay, so this is just really for the digital form. So I was wondering if it would be able to be helpful in the process of putting the disciplinary records online for the police officers, but it sounds like maybe not, since that is in a written format.
Yeah, so for SRRs written, there is probably in most officers' career, there potentially could be both handwritten ones and PDF fillable forms. So it probably would not be all encompassing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So are we ready to accept a vote on this item, introductory number 342? Is that right? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 8-0.
Clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 8-0 into the record.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
You're welcome.
I believe that concludes our business for tonight. I want to just take a second and thank both the clerk's office that had to exercise ultimate flexibility in trying to prepare materials for tonight, and our own chief of staff and his assistant just totally doing what it took to get the job done. We very much appreciate you. I especially want to thank Barbara Campbell, who actually brought my material to me because my computer's not working right. Thank you, Miss Barbara. And my vice president who printed it out for me and sent the eagle landed. Thank you, sir. Thank you. So I really very much appreciate all the work that people are doing and the flexibility folk are exercising in these very trying times. If there are no additional business or miscellaneous business, then we are adjourned.